causing it to grow upward very, very slowly. So with this one growing upward, this one growing down, eventually they could come together and form what we call a column. That's one structure going all the way from the floor to the ceiling, ceiling to the floor. I'm not going to stand around waiting for that to happen because, well, for one thing, I miss lunch because it's going to take a while. These things grow at an estimated rate of 1 cubic inch per 100 years. So as you can see, it's going to take thousands of years for those two to grow together. And it may not happen at all. If you look up here, you see some stalactites that are brown and dry. They're not growing anymore because there's no longer water flowing through that section of the ceiling, bringing them out of the minerals. Over here, these are continuing to grow. They're white, they're shiny, they're moist. And if the water patterns were to change in here in the next few hundred or few thousand years, the water started coming down from here again. Well, these can turn white and shiny and moist and continue to grow. And if the water stopped coming down through here, why these can dry out, turn brown, and stop growing. So for this reason, we don't know how old any of these things are. We just say they're really, really old. Because they grow at different rates, depending on where the water's flowing, what kind of minerals in the water, how much minerals in the water. There are a lot of variables. However, there's one formation in the cave where we're absolutely sure of its age. We know it almost to the day. And we'll show you that at our next stop. Now this is a column. This is a water pipe. Back in 1941, a guy built a house 92 feet above the ceiling of the cave. And in building his house, he needed water for the house, so he had to put in a well. And putting in his well, there were two things he didn't want to do. One, he didn't want to put it through the cave. He knew the cave was here. People were regularly visiting it by then. He knew a water pipe in a cave would be kind of an ugly thing. But the other thing he didn't want to do was spend money to have a surveyor come up here and tell him exactly where to put his well. So he and the cave owner figured it out for themselves, and look what happened. They missed by just a few feet. And if you look around the top of that well casing, you can see what look like brown strings hanging down along it. Those are the roots of a tree coming down into the cave almost 100 feet. And around the top, you can see those white look like snakes or ribbons coming out of it. Those are the beginnings of a formation we call draperies, like what you see in front of you here. Only these draperies up here are 70 years old. Now, the reason we know their exact age is because they weren't here when the well was drilled. And over the past 70 years, we've been able to watch those grow from nothing to where they are now, just about a half to 3/4 of an inch off the ceiling. So if that took 70 years to grow, you can imagine how long this took to grow. You know, over 100 years probably. Well, thousands and thousands of years. And you can see a sad thing. There were at some point somebody came in here that chipped off a few pieces of that thing and take home this is here. And in doing so, they were able in just a matter of seconds to destroy what it took thousands of years for nature to create. So we're really protective of these formations. We don't even touch them because even a touch can do damage to them, because when you touch it, you leave a fingerprint. That's just a little bit of oil, but that little bit of oil will keep the minerals from sticking as the water flows across it. In one touch, one time can create we call it a dead spot, and create a dead spot that'll last up to 40 years. Now, at our next stop, we're going to see what pure natural cave light looks like. If you want to see a really beautiful column, there's one right behind this curtain. If you have a digital camera or a cell phone or anything with a light on it, you might want to just cover it up for a few seconds here so we can all enjoy the beauty of pure natural cave light. This is what it looks like in a cave when you don't have any artificial light. Pure, perfect darkness, almost. But they didn't cover up their camera. But anyway, if you put your hand in front of your face, you'll notice you can't see it. You can stare at it all day and still not see it. It's so totally dark in here. Stop and turn around and go back. And it's still there. We'll see it at our next stop. I had some kids ask me if it was a bear. Well, it's bigger than a bear. It's still there. 10 feet down into that hole, the cave. There's actually a cave beneath the cave here at Fantastic Caverns. And every once in a while, those of us who work here are given the opportunity to go down and explore that lower cave. I don't want to go. grappling rocks. If you look down into this cave, or this sinkhole, you can see some rocks down there with water running through them. That's a little creek that runs through here when we get enough water in the ground. And it gathers water from a spring system that goes back, has about a 5-mile radius, goes all the way back to around Springfield Branson National Airport. And it flows from our left to our right, eventually spills out of the bluff, and flows into the Little Sock River. Now the level of this water can vary quite a bit. Most of the time there's no water in there at all, but of course we've had enough rain lately, there's a little running through here. And then every once in a while, the level of this water will vary and will come all the way up and fill both these sinkholes. Wow. In fact, we've had, in the past 18 years, you know, they have what they call 100-year floods. They're supposed to happen only once every 100 years. We've had 4 of those in the past 18 years. One was in 1993, 2 were in 2008. The most recent one was just a couple of weeks ago. And the water rose up in here, completely filled both these sinkholes, eventually came up to the rail of this bridge, and completely flooded out the cave for several days, about half a week. So we didn't have any tours in here. We had some walking tours as far as we could walk, but it wasn't that far. You know, these things can fill up and be dangerous. We'll talk about that a little later. Also in this lower cave, there's a passageway that runs beneath where we're going to go next, to a point beyond the end of the cave, as we'll see it today, to what's called the Paradise Room. The reason it's called the Paradise Room is because the only way to get there is to crawl through that little passageway, and it's only about this high. They say it's like crawling under your bed for 1,000 feet. It takes several hours, and by the time you get to the end of it, you can stand up again. It's like paradise. Of course, then you got to turn around and crawl all the way back out. Our next stop, we're going to get to experience something you can experience nowhere else.
History is filled with great discoveries where only the adventurous dare to go. And whether it was man or dog, the history of fantastic caverns has left a distinct impression on the Ozarks. The cave was actually discovered by a hunting dog that chased a small animal into a breach in the rocks. But it was in search of his dog that John Knox stumbled upon a great underground passageway, a vast chamber that would be kept secret for several years. In 1862, times were turbulent, with civil war raging throughout the land. If the discovery of a cavern had been publicized, Knox feared it might have been confiscated by Union or Confederate troops. The strategic underground location of a cave may have provided a great military advantage. Knox, therefore, kept his cave secret for 5 years. Then in 1867, he ran an advertisement in the Springfield newspaper, looking for people to explore the subterranean world. Surprisingly, 12 women, all members of the Springfield Athletic Club, answered the ad. Their names have been recorded in history on a wall within the cavern. Stories of the cavern's magnitude and extraordinary beauty brought other explorers. A letter dated February 28, 1867, written to the Missouri Weekly Patriot, described detailed impressions of Knox Cave.
On Thursday last, I paid a visit to the newly discovered cave on the farm of Mr. Knox, several miles northwest of Springfield. Unfortunately, the entrance is not very wide, but is sufficiently large to admit a person of your humble size with little difficulty. A few feet down, and you reach the Vespian Amphitheater, decorated by columns of stalagmite that can only be compared with wrought marble. Everywhere you are confronted with crystals as white as the driven snow. The formation, as in other caves, is purely calcified, reminding one by its continual yet uniform gripping of creation's long and steady process. The greatness of the size fills the mind with awe, and the imagination becomes infinite. We have visited many caves before, but have never seen anything as large, and need say, have never seen an equal amount of salt, pure earth.
In 1919, the property was sold, and the name was changed from Knox to Percy's Cave in honor of a son who was killed in World War I. The vibrant 20s brought lively changes to the underground world. The introduction of electricity and other modifications gave way to speakeasies during the notorious Prohibition era. Percy's Cave became known throughout the region for its illegal taverns and casinos. But in 1924, the speakeasy was shut down as a result of a shooting in the cave. 1925 was the beginning of a ghostly era for the cavern. Vigilante groups held secret meetings in and around Percy's Cave for the next 12 to 13 years. Not much is known about their activities, but by 1937, local interest in these secret organizations died and they disbanded. In the early 1950s, the cave received its name Fantastic Caverns, and properly so because of its magnificent beauty. Fantastic Caverns has evolved through many phases, and perhaps one of the most exciting eras was the 1960s and 70s. During this time, Fantastic Caverns became the site of the local, very popular Farm-A-Rama program that aired on KTVX radio. On Saturday nights, Fantastic Caverns was transformed into the entertainment capital of the Ozarks. Buck Owens.
Tiger by the tail, wait, I won't be much when you get through with me. While I'm losing the way that's hurting my pain. Looks like I've got tiger by the tail.
Tom T. Hall. Bobby Bear.
Last night I went to sleep in Detroit City.
Ray Price.
There is the arm that reaches to hold somebody new.
And Bobby Lewis, all performed on stage in the auditorium room of Fantastic Caverns, as well as other local celebrities. In fact, Ozark country music actually got its beginning on the stage at Fantastic Caverns. The Ozark Playboys, better known now as the Presleys, are still performing in Branson as one of the few original music shows. But one of the most remembered performers was Fantastic Caverns' very own Caveman, whose sole purpose was to interrupt and entertain the crowd. Today, Fantastic Caverns is still making history. Thousands of years have gone into the creation of Fantastic Caverns, and with each passing moment, history continues to be made. Most formations are alive and growing, so sit back in one of our Jeep-drawn trams and enjoy nature at work in historic, Fantastic Caverns.
Well, we're now 126 feet underground. We haven't come down all that far. We've come down most of it, but some of it's because the ground has gone up above us. We're underneath a hill. And beyond the screen, way in the back there, there's a clay wall that's about 30 feet thick. And on the other side of it is that paradise room that I mentioned earlier. Any questions before we go on? We really don't know who wrote those there or when. It's pretty obvious one person wrote them all because all the writing's about the same. We think it may have been the third lady from the top, was Jenny Waddle, because she's the only one whose full name is written up there. And it's also found written in the back section of the cave all by itself. And the writing doesn't stop. Over here on the right, there's a rock overhang. Watch your head as you go under it. It'll give you a bad headache. And it was a nitrate that grew in the soil in cave floors. And often what they do to prospect for it is just take a stick and draw a line in the dirt. Come back a couple days, if the line was gone, that was a pretty good indication it was saltpeter there, because it was alive and it would grow across the line. So they take that soil, put it in a big old leaching vat like this, and then they pour water through it. The water would absorb the saltpeter and carry it off into this lower bucket. Now here you have a mixture of saltpeter and water. They would take that, put it in a big old barrel like this over a fire, and heat it up. I see our fire has gone out, but the barrel is still there. And the water would eventually evaporate, leaving just a white chalky substance in the bottom. That was saltpeter. They would take that, mix it with potash and sulfur, mix those three things together, and what do you get? Gunpowder. You get gunpowder, right, for guns. This one doesn't seem to be working today.
Yeah. He's cool.
All right, well, if it worked, you'd hear a big loud noise. But like I say, it's not doing its job. The room we're in now is called the auditorium room, and it's the largest room in Fantastic Caverns. Back during the Prohibition era, this is where the bar was, up against this rock. Out in this area, they had a big old dance floor. They had gambling going on, all sorts of places. Then later, it was used as a theater. Not already was a theater, it's a very natural theater. Over here is a flat area where we could set up chairs, hundreds of them, maybe close to 1,000 for a big event. And then the acoustics in here is very good. It's very easy to be heard. In fact, several summers ago, a mariachi band from Springfield, sister city in Mexico came by. They were taking the tour. They got to this point. They got inspired. They got out of the trailer. They got up on the stage. And they did a little show. They didn't need a sound system because the acoustics in here are so good. And the air conditioner works great too. If you were in here in the summer and it was over 100 degrees outside, it would still be 60 degrees in here. Yep. If you were here in the winter and it were down below zero, it would still be 60 degrees in here. It's always very comfortable. Now, I don't know if any of you have been to Branson or going to Branson, but if you do, you can't hardly miss seeing Presley's Theater. It's the one that's right in the middle of everything. And the Presley family built the first theater on what is now 76 Country Boulevard in Branson. There are over 100 shows there now, but Presley's built the first theater. And before that, this was their theater. They performed on this stage. And if you were to go to their show this week, you'd see Herkimer. He's their comedian. And over the years, he's become one of the best known comedians in Branson, right up there with Yakov Smirnoff and Jim Stafford and all those other guys. Herkimer was actually born on this stage. I don't mean literally born on this stage, but Gary Presley was a teenage tour guide here, and he was asked to bring some comedy into the family show, so he borrowed his grandfather's old bib overalls and his other grandfather's hat and funny glasses, created the character of Herkimer, and first performed as Herkimer right here on the stage. And he's still doing it down in Branson. He's not a teenager anymore, but he still acts like one. And his sons and his grandchildren are in the show with him as well.
Wow. Look at that. Oh my.
This is the breakdown room. This is where thousands of years ago, while the cave was still filled with water, the water rushing across the ceiling dislodged a lot of this debris, and it fell down into this pile. We know it's been here a long, long time, because if you'll notice there's stalagmites growing up out of it. They take thousands of years to grow, and so we know this stuff's been here a long, long time. This is where we talk about some of the myths and some of the fears there are about caves. There are things you should be afraid of in a cave. Foremost would be the fear of drowning. Most people who die in caves in the state of Missouri drown because caves can flood. And this cave floods, as I mentioned earlier. But when it doesn't just all of a sudden flood. It's very predictable. It always follows several days of very heavy rain. And then as the water starts building up in here, it rises up slowly over a period of many hours, maybe even a couple of days, before it even begins to get dangerously high. So we'd have plenty of opportunity not to, to get out of here, or better yet, just not come down here in the first place. Another fear people have that's legitimate is the fear of falling. You could stumble around in the dark, fall into a sinkhole. Those 12 ladies that first explored the cave used the trail across the top of this debris. They could have fallen off that and killed or injured themselves. And then there's my favorite fear in a cave, and that's the fear of crawling into a tiny space and not being able to get out. And that's happened to some people, not in this cave but in others, but it's enough to keep me from wanting to go back to the Paradise Room or anything like that. Then there are myths about caves. I have a friend that won't come down here because he's afraid. He said, well, what if it caves in? Well, yeah, caves can cave in, and yes, this cave could cave in, but what would have to happen first, it would have to fill up with water again. And then if the water rushed across the ceiling for, I don't know, several thousand more years, it could perhaps erode the ceiling and cause it to cave in. So that's not something that's going to happen today. At least I hope not. In fact, people have been in here for 144 years, and I only know of one thing that has ever fallen off the ceiling of this cave and hit anybody, and that's a few drops of water every once in a while. So some of you have had that happen to you. That's as bad as it gets. And in fact, they say a cave is a fairly safe place to be even during an earthquake, because unlike a mine or a building that's artificial, a cave is natural and will tend to move with the earth during the earthquake. Personally, I think I'd rather be out in the middle of the field somewhere, but they say that a cave does stay relatively stable even in an earthquake. Another fear people have is the fear of bats. Now, I mentioned I would talk a little bit more about bats. And there are some bats in here. They're little bitty bats. They're about the size of my thumb. They're called eastern pipistrelle bats. And then there are brown bats about the size of my fist. Well, they don't attack people. They don't like us very much. What they like to do is go out at night, fly around and eat bugs. At night, they like to come into a cave and just find a dark, quiet place to sleep. Well, you can imagine how you'd feel if I drove a Jeep through your bedroom in the middle of the night and shined a light around and started telling people about your furniture. You wouldn't like that. Well, bats don't like it either. So the few bats that are in here, at this time of the day, they're usually tucked away in some dark little alcove where we can't see them or disturb them, just trying to get a good day's sleep.
Right.
Every once in a while, we'll see one sleeping out in the open on a ceiling or a wall, or one will fly through, but for the most part, they're hiding from us. And we may see some before we leave the cave. There were some the other day up ahead of us, and if I see one, I'll point them out to you, because they're small and you'd probably miss them. At our next stop, we're going to see the cave pretty much the way those 12 ladies saw it back in 1867. And on our way in there, if you look straight up in this next section, you'll see some beautiful stalactites up there. First set foot back in 1867, and it was dark in here. A lot darker than this even, because we're getting some light from an artificial gate that we made that drive the Jeep out of the cave through the bluff. And so they brought lanterns with them, probably lanterns like this. This is called a candle lantern. Pretty simple. It's just a candle in a can. And it kind of looks like your flashlight at home might look if the battery were about to go dead. Well, I'm going to retrace some of their steps. Remember, it was 1867. Back then, ladies didn't wear jeans or coveralls, and were probably wearing a long dress. As they squeezed through the opening, and John Knox dog, some 5 years earlier, came out into this room where no human being had ever been before. John Knox never came in here. He just reached in, got his dog, got out. The Indians never used this cave for reasons we'll explain in just a moment. Imagine those ladies coming down through here. They had no idea what they'd find because nobody'd been here before. They had just this kind of light, and I'm sure they could see these huge ghostly objects rising up around them. That's pretty scary. Of course, today we can see this a lot better and a lot more clearly because we have electric lights in here. This is the Hall of Giants. The area the entrance the ladies came in through is up behind this column, so we really can't see it from inside the cave, but we will see when we get outside. It's been 144 years since those ladies were in here, so I don't imagine they're with us anymore, but if they were, they would have wandered back into fantastic caverns. I'm only their candle lantern form here. Okay, actually, I'm leaving it for the next tour. Now, the area ahead of us here has the lowest ceiling in the cave. It's so low that I've got to take this lantern out of its holder, or it could get cut off by the ceiling of the cave as it slants upward. Now, so it's particularly low on the driver's side. If it's any comfort to you, I don't know of anybody ever getting hurt up here, but every once in a while we do find hair on the ceiling, so watch your head.
Yeah, it's like a face.
Here's that little line.
That's really low. Low spot, babe. Way down. Beautiful. When I was a kid, we went to a We're done.
Did any of you get water dripped on you in the cave?
Oh yeah.
Well, good. That's a good thing. That's an honor. That's called a cave kiss. And according to legend, it means the cave loves you. And it's supposed to bring you good luck. I don't know about that. I told that old guy a while back he couldn't wait to get out of here and go buy a lottery ticket. But I got it twice. It's like
extra lucky, I think. Oh, please, God.
Came out from cave and see the technology. Nothing's coming.
if we have any pictures of those first ladies that explored the cave, and we don't. It could be, I haven't seen the bird this year. Usually she's there, and we talk about cave kisses, and that, what, if they come out there,
He said he has.
fly
He said
over.
they do different. He has something paid for it inside. He said just pay for it.
You tell people if something wet falls on them.
Just debit.
I hope it's a cave kiss.
No, I'll beat you no picture later.
If you look over in the corner of this bluff, you can see some rocks there on the ground. Behind the rocks, a dark hollow spot. That's where those 12 ladies had to crawl to get into fantastic caverns. That doesn't look real inviting at all. In fact,
No one thought of that, did it?
it took a lot of nerve. Somebody asked if the Indians ever used this cave. There's no indication they did. The Osage tribe used to camp out in this valley down here. And as they looked up at this bluff as it looked then, this bluff looked pretty much like that bluff over there, just all covered with bushes and trees. So they probably never found the cave. And if they did, it wasn't the kind of cave they'd have wanted to stay in, because if they'd have gone in there and lit a fire to cook or to warm themselves with just that one little opening, the only natural opening to the cave, the smoke would have built up in there almost immediately and driven them out. So we're pretty sure it was those 12 ladies from Springfield who first explored fantastic caverns. Again, the pictures, if you want them, are $10. If not, you can just pass it back to me. I can make change here. Oh, I should mention this is Sunday. We do have a Sunday special. That's one picture for $10, two for just $20.
Such a deal, such a deal.
Can you pay for them inside?
No, you'll need to pay for them here.